Commander Jake Morrison wiped blood from his face as he walked through the smoking ruins. His team had just finished another mission for the Galactic Council. They called it peacekeeping, but Jake was starting to have doubts. The wreckage around him told a different story than what the Council had briefed them about. This was supposed to be a terrorist base, full of dangerous criminals who threatened galactic peace. But Jake saw children's toys scattered among the debris. Medical supplies lay crushed under fallen beams. These weren't the weapons of terrorists. "Commander, you need to see this," called Dr. Lisa Hammond from across the ruined settlement. She held up a small device, her face pale with worry. "These are civilian ID chips. Families with children lived here." Jake felt his stomach drop. He had been leading human forces for the Council for 15 years. Earth had joined the Galactic Concordance 73 years ago, and humans had been working hard to prove they belonged among the stars. The Council gave them the dangerous missions, the ones too risky for other species. Jake had always been proud to serve. Captain Tony Rodriguez jogged over, his armor scorched from the battle. "Sir, I found something else you won't like. There's a school here, or what's left of one." Tony's voice was quiet, angry. "The Council told us we were hitting a weapons factory." Jake looked around at his team. These were good soldiers, loyal to Earth and the mission. But he could see the same doubt in their eyes that was growing in his heart. They had been lied to. The communication device on Jake's wrist buzzed. Admiral Helen Brooks appeared as a small hologram, her weathered face serious. "Morrison, report. Mission status? Target eliminated, Admiral, but we have a problem." Jake paused, choosing his words carefully. "This wasn't what they told us it was." Admiral Brooks frowned. "Explain." "We didn't hit terrorists, Admiral. We hit families. Refugees, maybe. There are children's belongings everywhere. Medical supplies. This was a civilian settlement." The hologram flickered as Admiral Brooks considered this. She had been Jake's mentor since he joined the military. She was also one of the few people who remembered what Earth was like before the Council arrived, with their promises of membership and protection. "Gather everything you can and return to base immediately," she ordered. "We need to talk." The flight back to the human base station took 6 hours. Jake spent most of it staring out at the stars, thinking about the mission. How many times had they done this? How many settlements had they destroyed in the name of peace? The Council always provided perfect intelligence, complete mission briefs. They never questioned orders. Dr. Hammond worked quietly in the ship's lab, analyzing the evidence they had collected. Her findings made everything worse. The destroyed settlement had been home to Kethran refugees, a species that had been fleeing Council taxation policies. The medical supplies were for treating radiation poisoning from contaminated worlds the Council had strip-mined for resources. When they docked at the station, Ambassador Veltar was waiting for them. The tall, gray-skinned Zenthari representative of the Council stood with perfect posture, his forearms folded in what humans had learned was a gesture of authority. "Commander Morrison," Veltar said in his translator's mechanical voice, "your mission was successful. The terrorist threat has been eliminated." Jake stepped forward, his jaw tight. Those weren't terrorists. They were refugees. Families with children. Veltar's large black eyes showed no emotion. Irrelevant. They were designated as threats to galactic stability. "By who?" Jake demanded. "Based on what evidence?" "By the Council. That is all the evidence required." Veltar moved closer, and Jake caught the strange metallic smell that all Zenthari carried. "You seem to misunderstand your role, human. You are not here to question orders. You are here to follow them." The casual dismissal hit Jake like a physical blow. "Our role? What exactly is our role?" Veltar studied him for a moment, then seemed to decide something. "Your species serves a useful purpose. You are violent and expendable, perfect for missions that would complicate the Council's reputation if performed by more civilized species." Dr. Hammond stepped forward. "Expendable? We've been partners for over 70 years. Veltar made a sound that the translator rendered as laughter. "Partners? You were never partners. You are tools. Very effective tools, but tools nonetheless." He gestured with one of his forearms toward the viewport showing Earth in the distance. "Your world provides soldiers and your species asks few questions. This arrangement has worked well." Jake felt rage building in his chest. "And what happens when we're no longer useful tools?" "Then you will be discarded, as all tools are when they break or become obsolete." Veltar turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and Commander, The medical assistance programs your world has been receiving, they ensure your species will naturally phase out within 2 generations. Consider it a kindness. Your children will not live to see their parents' fate. The ambassador left, leaving Jake and his team in stunned silence. Dr. Hammond was the first to speak, her voice barely a whisper. He's talking about sterilization. They've been sterilizing our people. Tony slammed his fist against the wall. How long? How long have they been doing this to us? Jake activated his secure communicator and reached Admiral Brooks. Admiral, we need to meet now, and make sure the channel is clean. An hour later, they sat in a shielded conference room deep in the station. Admiral Brooks listened as Jake recounted their conversation with Veltar. Her face grew darker with each detail. There's more, she said when he finished. I've been investigating some irregularities in our supply shipments. The atmospheric processors they've been giving us aren't cleaning our air. They're slowly poisoning it, very slowly over generations. Dr. Hammond pulled up data on her portable screen. If what the ambassador said is true about the medical programs, our birth rates should be dropping. I can check the data from Earth. Her fingers moved quickly across the screen. The numbers that appeared made them all sick. Human birth rates had been declining for 20 years. Genetic defects were increasing. The pattern was clear once they knew what to look for. They're killing us, Tony said quietly. Slowly, but they're killing us. Jake stood and walked to the window. Earth hung in space below them, blue and beautiful and doomed. Not if we stop them first. How? Admiral Brooks asked. They have the entire galaxy. We have one world and some ships. Jake turned back to his team. We have something they don't understand. They think our violence makes us monsters. They're about to learn that our violence in defense of our people makes us something much worse. Alarms suddenly blared throughout the station. The lights flickered to red emergency status. A voice came over the communication system. All personnel to battle stations. Council ships approaching. This is not a drill. Through the window, Jake could see sleek alien vessels moving toward the station. Veltar had decided they knew too much. Looks like the war starts now, Jake said, reaching for his weapon. Let's show them what human monsters can really do. The council ships opened fire without warning. Jake Morrison threw himself behind a bulkhead as energy blasts tore through the station's outer hull. The sound of alarms mixed with the screams of wounded soldiers and the hiss of atmosphere escaping through breached sections. All hands, abandon ship. Admiral Brooks' voice echoed through the corridors. This is not a retreat. This is a fighting withdrawal. Jake grabbed his rifle and sprinted toward the hangar bay where Tony Rodriguez was already preparing their ship for emergency launch. Dr. Lisa Hammond ran beside him, clutching a data pad with all the evidence they had gathered about the Council's betrayal. The hangar shook as another energy blast struck the station. Chunks of metal rained down around them as they reached their ship, the Earth's pride. It was an old human design built for speed rather than comfort. Right now, speed was all that mattered. Jake, Admiral Brooks appeared at the hangar entrance, blood running down her face from a head wound. Get that data to Earth, tell them everything. The Resistance needs to know. Resistance? Jake helped her toward the ship as Tony started the engines. Did you think we were the only ones who suspected something was wrong? Brooks smiled grimly. General Rick Hayes has been building a network for 20 years. Underground bases, hidden weapons, loyal soldiers. He's been waiting for proof. The ship lifted off just as another energy blast destroyed the hangar behind them. Jake watched through the rear viewer as the space station where he had served for 5 years exploded in a ball of fire. Hundreds of good people died in seconds, all because they had learned the truth. Where to, Commander? Tony asked, his hand steady on the controls despite the chaos around them. Earth, Jake said. Home. The journey to Earth took 3 days. Dr. Hammond spent most of that time analyzing the data they had rescued and making some terrible discoveries. The Council's betrayal went deeper than anyone had imagined. The atmospheric processors aren't just poisoning us slowly, she explained as they sat in the ship's small common area. They're terraforming our planet, changing the air composition to match what the Zenthari breathe. When we're all dead, they'll move right in. Tony cursed in Spanish, something his grandmother had taught him. How long do we have? At current rates? Maybe 50 years before the atmosphere becomes toxic to humans. Hammond's face was pale with exhaustion. But if they speed up the process, they won't have to, Jake said quietly. If this evidence gets out, if people learn the truth, there'll be a war. They'll just kill us all at once and take the planet. When they reached Earth's orbital space, Jake was surprised to see how many ships were already there. Not just human vessels, but alien designs he didn't recognize. Some looked like modified council ships. Earth's pride, this is Luna Base Control, came a voice over their communication system. Transmit identification and prepare to be boarded. Luna Base? Tony frowned. There's no military base on the moon. Jake smiled for the first time in days. There is now. The inspection team that boarded their ship wore human uniforms Jake didn't recognize. The leader was a young woman with lieutenant's bars and sharp, intelligent eyes. Lieutenant Ben Carter, she introduced herself, then paused. Sorry, I meant Lieutenant Ben Carter's sister, Amy Carter. My brother's the pilot. I'm Amy Collins, Dr. Amy Collins. I design things that go boom. Jake handed her their datapad. Then you're going to love what we brought you. Dr. Collins studied the information as they were escorted to a shuttle that would take them to the hidden Luna base. Her expression grew more serious with each page she read. General Hayes is going to want to see this immediately, she said. We've suspected most of it, but we've never had proof. Luna base was larger than Jake had expected. Tunnels carved deep into the moon's surface housed thousands of people, and enough military equipment to fight a war. General Rick Hayes met them at the main airlock. Hayes was older than Jake had expected, with gray hair and scars that spoke of a long military career. But his eyes were sharp and angry. Commander Morrison, Hayes said, shaking Jake's hand. Admiral Brooks sent word ahead. We've been waiting for someone like you to come home. Someone like me. Someone who's seen the truth and lived to tell about it. Hayes led them through corridors carved from solid rock. We've been preparing for this day for 2 decades. The question is, are you ready to fight for humanity's survival? Jake looked around at the bustling base. Soldiers moved with purpose, scientists worked on strange devices, and everywhere he looked, people were preparing for war. What do you need? Jake asked. Hayes smiled. Everything. But first, we need to wake up Earth. The broadcast went out 3 hours later. Every communication device on Earth received the same message simultaneously. The evidence of the Council's betrayal, recorded testimonies from Jake's team, and a call to action that changed everything. Within hours, protests erupted in every major city on Earth. But something else happened that surprised everyone. Earth's government tried to shut down the broadcasts and arrest General Hayes. They're in on it, Dr. Hammond said as they watched news feeds from around the world. Our own leaders are working with the Council. President William Foster appeared on official channels, declaring General Hayes a terrorist and offering rewards for information leading to the capture of Jake Morrison and his team. The president spoke of the vital alliance with the Council and the dangerous extremists trying to destroy Earth's place in the galaxy. But the people weren't listening to President Foster anymore. They were listening to General Hayes and the evidence Jake had brought home. Within a week, half of Earth's military had joined the resistance. The other half remained loyal to the government, and by extension, the Council. Civil war had begun. Jake found himself leading raids against government facilities, trying to capture weapons and resources for the resistance. Dr. Collins had created new weapons based on human technology that the Council had never seen. Simple, brutal, effective devices that turned human creativity into tactical advantage. The aliens think in patterns, Dr. Collins explained as she showed Jake her latest creation. Their computers predict behavior based on logical choices. But humans don't always make logical choices. We improvise, we adapt. We do things that don't make sense until they work. The weapon she showed him looked like a simple rifle, but it fired projectiles that changed direction in flight, following random patterns that no alien computer could predict. Simple technology, but devastating against enemies who relied on advanced shields and predictive systems. The first real battle came at Luna Base itself. Council ships supported by Earth government forces attacked the resistance stronghold. Jake stood in the command center next to General Hayes. Watching enemy ships approach, they outnumber us 10-1, Hayes observed calmly. Good, Jake replied, remembering Ambassador Veltar's dismissive attitude. They'll underestimate us. The battle lasted 6 hours. When it was over, the Council fleet was destroyed, and Jake Morrison had learned something important. Humans might be primitive by galactic standards, but their unpredictability made them dangerous in ways the Council had never imagined. standing in the wreckage of the enemy command ship. Jake activated his communication device and sent a message to every Council world within range. "This is Commander Jake Morrison of the Human Liberation Force. You made a mistake when you betrayed us. You thought we were just violent primitives you could use and discard. You were wrong. We're violent primitives who protect our own, and now we're coming for you." The war for humanity's survival had begun, but as Jake looked at the stars through the shattered viewport of the enemy ship, he realized this was about more than just survival. This was about justice for every species the Council had betrayed. The stars had been stained by centuries of Council crimes. It was time to wash them clean. 6 months after the Battle of Luna Base, Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of humanity's first true warship. The Liberation was built from salvaged Council technology and human engineering. A ship that shouldn't exist according to galactic law. Only Council members were allowed to build vessels this large and powerful, but humanity was no longer following galactic law. "Contact ahead, Commander," reported Captain Sue Parker from the navigation station. Sue had joined the Resistance after her family was killed in a Council bombing of New York. Her hatred burned cold and focused, making her one of their best reconnaissance pilots. "What do we have?" Jake asked, studying the tactical display. "Council supply depot at Kepler Station. Heavily defended, but the intelligence from our new friends suggests it's worth the risk." The new friends Sue mentioned were refugees from the Altair system. When word of humanity's rebellion had spread beyond Earth, other species had begun reaching out. Not governments or official representatives, but survivors. Groups that had been betrayed by the Council just like humanity, but had never been strong enough to fight back. Dr. Frank Thompson, the Resistance's new weapons chief, looked up from his workstation. "The Prometheus protocol is ready for field testing, Commander. This could be the perfect opportunity." Jake nodded. The Prometheus protocol was Frank's masterpiece, a weapon system that learned and adapted during battle. It was named after the human myth of stealing fire from the gods. Frank thought it was appropriate. "Sue, signal the fleet. We go in fast and hard. No mercy for Council forces, but protect any civilians or slave workers." The attack on Kepler Station became a legend among the Resistance forces. The Council defenders were prepared for human tactics they had seen before. Sudden strikes, guerrilla warfare, unpredictable movements. They were not prepared for weapons that evolved during the fight. Frank's Prometheus protocol started the battle as simple energy weapons. But as the system analyzed enemy shields and defenses, it adapted. Within minutes, the weapons were firing completely different types of energy that cut through Council barriers like they didn't exist. "How is this possible?" came a transmission from the Council commander. "These are primitive weapons. They should not be able to penetrate our defenses," Jake answered personally. "That's your problem. You keep thinking we're primitive. We're not primitive. We're creative." The station fell in 2 hours. As Jake's forces secured the facility, they made a discovery that changed everything. In the station's data cores, they found records of something called the graveyard sectors. Dr. Lisa Hammond, now serving as the Resistance's chief intelligence officer, brought the data to Jake's attention immediately. "Commander, you need to see this. The Council hasn't just betrayed us. They've been doing this for centuries." The records showed star system after star system that had been pacified by the Council. Entire civilizations that had been used as tools and then eliminated when they were no longer useful. The Zerani, who had served as the Council's merchants until they grew too wealthy. The Brolocs, who had served as laborers until they began demanding rights. The Cathari, who had served as administrators until they started asking questions. Dozens of species, billions of lives, all erased from history because they had outlived their usefulness to the Council. "They're not a government," Jake said quietly as he read through the files. "They're parasites. They find useful species, drain them dry, then move on to the next victims." Captain Tony Rodriguez, now commanding his own ship, joined them via secure communication. "Jake, we're getting signals from some of those dead systems. Weak signals, but they're there. Survivors? Has to be. Hidden colonies, maybe. People who escaped the purges." Jake made a decision that would change the course of the war. Instead of attacking more Council military targets, he ordered the fleet to investigate the graveyard sectors. If there were survivors out there, humanity needed allies more than it needed victories. The first system they investigated was Zerani Prime. The planet's surface was dead, turned to glass by Council bombardment. But Sue Parker's scouts found something in the asteroid belt, a hidden colony ship with 3,000 Zerani survivors. Commander Mary Johnson, who had taken command of the new Human Liberation Fleet, handled the first contact. The Zerani leader, an elderly being named Crixtal, was suspicious at first. "You are council servants," Crixtal said through the translator. "We know of humans. You destroy those who oppose the council." "Not anymore," Mary replied. "We learned the truth. Just like you did." Jake joined the conversation via video link. "The council betrayed us too. They used us to do their dirty work, then tried to eliminate us when we got inconvenient. We're fighting back." Crixtal studied Jake's scarred face for a long moment. "You truly oppose the council? You understand they will never stop hunting you?" "Let them come," Jake said. "We're not running anymore. We're fighting, and we're winning." The Zerani joined the rebellion that day. Within a week, they had provided intelligence that led the human fleet to 4 more hidden colonies. Each group of survivors brought new allies, new technologies, and new reasons to hate the council. Dr. Thompson began adapting alien technologies to work with human weapon systems. The results were devastating. Where human creativity had made their weapons unpredictable, alien engineering made them unstoppable. The council's response was swift and brutal. They began destroying entire worlds to prevent them from joining the rebellion. The galaxy watched in horror as the council revealed their true nature, abandoning all pretense of civilization. "They're showing everyone what they really are," Sue observed as they watched news feeds of the council's latest atrocity. An entire planet burned because its government had considered joining the human rebellion. "Good," Jake replied. "Let the galaxy see. Let them understand what happens when you trust the council's promises." More species began reaching out to the human fleet. Not just survivors this time, but active governments seeking protection from council retaliation. The rebellion was becoming a revolution. Jake found himself commanding not just human forces, but a coalition of dozens of species. Each brought their own strengths to the fight. The Zerani were master engineers. The Brolocs were incredible warriors. The Cathari understood council computer systems better than anyone. But it was Dr. Thompson's discovery about council technology that gave them their greatest advantage. The aliens had been using the same basic systems for thousands of years, refined and improved but fundamentally unchanged. Human technology was crude by comparison, but it was also completely alien to council understanding. "Their computers can't predict what our weapons will do," Frank explained to the Coalition's War Council. "They're designed to fight civilized warfare. We're not civilized. We're desperate, and desperate people do things that don't make sense until they work." The proof came at the Battle of Epsilon Eridani. A massive council fleet, led by Ambassador Veltar himself, moved to crush the rebellion once and for all. They had overwhelming numbers, superior technology, and home field advantage. Jake's coalition fleet was outnumbered 50-1. The battle lasted 12 hours. When it was over, Veltar's fleet was completely destroyed. The ambassador himself died when Jake's ship rammed his flagship, both men fighting hand-to-hand in the wreckage until Jake emerged victorious. Standing over Veltar's body, Jake activated his fleet communication system. "This is Admiral Jake Morrison to all council forces. Your ambassador is dead. Your fleet is destroyed, and this is just the beginning." He paused, looking out at the burning remains of council ships. "You thought we were tools you could use and discard. You were wrong. We're weapons you created and aimed at yourselves. And now we're coming for your homeworlds." The message was broadcast across the galaxy. Within days, 3 more star systems declared independence from the council. The rebellion had become an avalanche that nothing could stop. Jake stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars that had once seemed so far away. Now they were destinations, targets, goals to be achieved. The council had ruled this galaxy for millennia, but their time was ending. The fire of human rebellion was spreading to every corner of space, and it would not stop until the galaxy was free. Admiral Jake Morrison stared at the tactical display showing the council's latest atrocity. The Vegan system, home to 6 billion innocent beings, had been completely destroyed. Not conquered, not occupied, but turned into radioactive debris floating in space. The council's message was clear: join the rebellion and die. "They're not even pretending to be civilized anymore," said Admiral Chris Taylor from across the command table. Chris had been a human officer serving the council until 3 months ago, when he watched them execute his entire crew for questioning orders. Now he commanded a fleet of defectors who knew the Council's tactics better than anyone. Dr. Jane Walsh looked up from her research station, her face pale with exhaustion and anger. I've been analyzing the destruction patterns. This isn't random violence. They're targeting worlds with specific resource signatures. What kind of resources? Jake asked. Life energy. They're literally feeding on the death of these civilizations. Jane's hand shook as she called up her data. The Council isn't from this galaxy, Jake. They're refugees from somewhere else. And they're consuming our galaxy to power their civilization. Colonel Mike Anderson, who commanded the defense of the Titan colonies, leaned forward. That explains why they never really developed their own worlds. They just strip mine everything and move on. Jake felt a chill run down his spine. The scope of the Council's evil was beyond anything he had imagined. How long have they been doing this? Based on the data we've captured, at least 10,000 years. Maybe longer. Jane pulled up star charts showing dead systems throughout the galaxy. They move slowly, carefully. They let civilizations develop, then use them up. By the time anyone realizes what's happening, it's too late. Except this time it wasn't too late, Chris said grimly. We figured it out. We fought back. The communication system chimed with an incoming priority message. The image that appeared made Jake's blood boil. High Counselor Zethron, the leader of the Council's ruling body, stood in what looked like a throne room made of crystallized bone. Admiral Morrison, Zethran's voice was like ice scraping against metal. You have caused considerable inconvenience to our plans. Good, Jake replied. I hope we've ruined your whole millennium. Zethron made a gesture that might have been amusement. You still do not understand the scope of what you face. We have consumed 1,000 galaxies. We have destroyed civilizations that make yours look like insects. You are nothing. Then why are you talking to me instead of crushing me? There was a pause that told Jake everything he needed to know. The Council was afraid. For the first time in millennia, they faced opposition they couldn't simply overwhelm. We offer you a bargain, Zethron continued. Take your people and go. We will give you ships, worlds, whatever you need to establish yourselves elsewhere. In return, you will stop interfering with our administration of this galaxy. Jake looked around the command center at his officers, his friends, the people who had fought beside him for 2 years. He thought about the billions of beings the Council had already killed and the billions more they planned to kill. Here's my counteroffer, Jake said, standing up so the alien could see his full face. You leave this galaxy now and we'll let you go. Stay and we'll show you what humans do to parasites. Zethron's image flickered with what Jake hoped was rage. You would condemn your own species to extinction for the sake of aliens you barely know? We're not fighting for our species, Jake replied. We're fighting for everyone's right to exist. Something you've never understood. The transmission cut off. Within hours, the Council's response became clear. They abandoned all restraint and began systematically destroying every world that had shown sympathy for the rebellion. Entire sectors went dark as Council fleets moved from system to system, turning planets into graveyards. But Jake's coalition was ready. Dr. Walsh's research had revealed the Council's greatest weakness. Their technology required massive amounts of energy they got from destroying civilizations. Cut off that energy supply and their advantage disappeared. We're not going to fight them ship to ship anymore, Jake announced to his fleet commanders. We're going to hit their infrastructure. Every energy collection facility, every processing station, every support base. We choke off their power supply and watch them weaken. The strategy worked better than anyone had hoped. As human and allied forces struck at Council energy installations, the alien war machine began to falter. Their shields weakened, their weapons became less effective, their ships moved more slowly. Admiral Taylor led a brilliant assault on the Council's main energy processing facility at Alpha Centauri. Colonel Anderson's Titan Defense Corps destroyed 3 harvesting stations in a single day. Captain Sue Parker, now commanding a full squadron, eliminated an entire Council supply chain in the Outer Rim, but the Council's desperation made them more dangerous than ever. Cut off from their usual energy sources, they began targeting inhabited worlds directly, trying to drain entire populations to power their war effort. Jake watched in horror as the Altair colonies, humanity's first alien allies, were attacked by a massive Council fleet. 4 billion Zerani lived in that system, including Crixtal, the elder who had first trusted human promises of protection. We can't get there in time, Chris reported, studying the tactical situation. Even at maximum speed, they'll be finished draining the system before we arrive. Jake stared at the display showing the distances involved. By the time his fleet reached Altair, his friends would be dead and the Council would be recharged enough to continue their rampage. Then we don't go to them, Jake said suddenly. We bring them to us. The plan was insane, even by human standards. Jake took his entire fleet and attacked the Council's core worlds directly, the heavily defended systems where the alien leadership lived. He wasn't trying to conquer them. He was trying to draw the Council forces away from Altair. It worked. The Council fleet attacking Altair turned back to defend their home systems. But by then, Sue Parker's fast attack squadron had reached the colonies and evacuated the civilian population. The Battle of the Council Core lasted 3 days. Jake's forces were outnumbered 100 to 1, fighting in the heart of enemy territory against their most powerful ships. But they had something the Council didn't understand. They were fighting for each other. When human ships were damaged, alien crews repaired them. When alien vessels ran out of ammunition, human ships shared their supplies. The coalition Jake had built wasn't just a military alliance. It was a family willing to die for each other. Dr. Thompson's latest weapons performed beyond all expectations. Human creativity combined with alien engineering produced devices that confused even Council computers, energy weapons that fired solid projectiles, missiles that became energy beams, shields that attacked enemy ships instead of defending. On the second day of the battle, Jake's flagship was boarded by Council troops. The fighting was brutal, hand-to-hand in the ship's corridors. Jake found himself facing a Council warrior twice his size, armed with weapons that could cut through steel. But the alien had never fought a human who had nothing left to lose. Jake used every dirty trick he'd learned in decades of combat, every underhanded tactic that civilized species would never consider. When the fight was over, the Council warrior was dead and Jake was still standing. By the third day, the Council forces were retreating. Their energy reserves were exhausted, their ships were crippled, and their morale was broken. For the first time in their species' history, they had been defeated in their own territory. Jake stood on the bridge of his battered flagship, looking out at the wreckage of the most powerful fleet in galactic history. Around him, his officers celebrated victory. But Jake felt only grim satisfaction. This isn't over, he told his communications officer. Send a message to every Council world, every species still under their control. Tell them the Council can be beaten. Tell them we're coming. He paused, thinking about Zethran's offer and the choice he had made. And tell them that humans don't abandon their friends ever. The galaxy was watching now. The rebellion had become a revolution, and the revolution was becoming a war of liberation. The Council's reign of terror was ending, but the fight for freedom was just beginning. Jake looked out at the stars and smiled grimly. The Council had ruled through fear for millennia. Now they would learn what humans did when they were no longer afraid. Fleet Admiral Jake Morrison stood in the ruins of the Council's Central Command Center, watching the last of the alien leadership surrender. High Counselor Zethran knelt among the debris of his throne room, his forearms bound with human restraints, his proud bearing finally broken. You have won, human, Zethran said, his voice hollow with defeat. But victory will destroy you. No species can rule a galaxy without becoming what we became. You will learn this truth. Jake studied the alien who had terrorized civilizations for millennia. We're not here to rule anyone. We're here to free everyone. Around them, the massive command station that had controlled the Council's empire lay in smoking ruins. 2 years of war had brought humanity and its allies to this moment, the complete defeat of the most powerful force the galaxy had ever known. Admiral Chris Taylor approached, leading a group of Council prisoners. That's the last of them, Jake. The Council leadership is finished. What are your orders? Jake looked at the defeated aliens, then at his own people. Dr. Jane Walsh was treating wounded soldiers, both human and alien, with equal care. Colonel Mike Anderson was helping evacuate civilian workers who had been trapped in the battle. Captain Sue Parker was coordinating rescue efforts for survivors in the lower levels. These were warriors who had learned to heal as well as fight. Set up war crimes tribunals, Jake said finally. Everyone gets a fair trial. Evidence, witnesses, proper legal proceedings. We're going to show the galaxy how justice works. Zethran laughed bitterly. Justice? You speak of justice while standing in the ruins of our civilization? Your civilization was built on the bones of others, Jake replied. What we destroyed was an empire of parasites. What we're building is something different. The trials took 6 months. Jake insisted on transparency, broadcasting the proceedings to every world in the galaxy. The evidence of council crimes was overwhelming. Genocide, slavery, systematic destruction of entire species, the consumption of civilizations for energy. But Jake also insisted on proper defense for the accused, fair procedures and consideration of individual circumstances. Some council members had opposed the worst policies. Others had been forced to participate under threat to their own families. We're not here for revenge, Jake told the galaxy during his opening statement. We're here for justice. There's a difference. Dr. Lisa Hammond, now serving as chief prosecutor, presented evidence that stunned even Jake. The council had destroyed over 300 civilizations in the past millennium alone. Billions of beings had died to fuel their energy harvesting technology. When the trials ended, most council leaders were found guilty of crimes against civilization. But instead of execution, Jake's coalition chose a different punishment. The guilty would spend their remaining lives helping to rebuild the worlds they had destroyed. Death is too easy, Jake explained to those who questioned his mercy. They're going to live with what they've done and work to fix it. Zethran was among those sentenced to reconstruction duty. As he was led away, he spoke to Jake one last time. You think you are being merciful, human, but you are making a mistake. Evil that is not destroyed will return. Maybe, Jake acknowledged, but good that chooses mercy over vengeance builds something worth protecting. The real work began after the trials ended. The galaxy was free from council rule, but freedom brought new challenges. Hundreds of species needed new governments. Thousands of worlds required rebuilding. Economic systems had to be restructured. Trade routes needed protection. President Lisa Grant, Earth's new leader elected after the corrupt government fell, worked with Jake to establish the Galactic Republic. Unlike the Council's empire, this would be a voluntary association of free worlds. No species will ever again be used as tools by another, Jake declared at the founding ceremony. No world will be drained for the benefit of others. Every civilization has the right to grow, prosper, and determine its own future. The new constitution included what became known as the Morrison Doctrine. Any threat to the freedom of one member world was a threat to all. Humanity's role was to be the galaxy's guardians, protecting smaller species from those who would exploit them. General Paul Roberts, who had commanded human forces during the final battles, became the first director of the Galactic Defense Force. His mandate was simple: ensure that nothing like the Council could ever rise again. We're not conquerors, Roberts explained to his officers. We're protectors. There's a difference, and we better never forget it. Dr. Jane Walsh's research into Council technology led to breakthroughs that benefited every species in the galaxy. The energy harvesting systems that had powered genocide were converted to provide clean power for reconstruction efforts. The medical technology that had sterilized humans was used to cure diseases and extend lifespans. We took their tools of oppression and turned them into instruments of liberation, Walsh reported to the Republic's Science Council. It seems appropriate. Ambassador Kate Miller, humanity's first representative to the new galactic government, worked tirelessly to build relationships between species that had been kept apart by Council policies. Trade flourished, cultures mixed, and new friendships formed across the stars. The reconstruction took decades, but gradually the galaxy healed from millennia of Council rule. Former slave worlds became prosperous trade centers. Species that had been enemies under the Council became allies in the Republic. Technologies that had been hoarded by the elite were shared freely among all civilizations. Jake, now in his 70s, spent his final years visiting worlds throughout the galaxy. Everywhere he went, he saw the fruits of the freedom they had fought for. Children of dozens of species played together in schools built on former battlefields. Scientists from across the galaxy worked together on projects that benefited everyone. On Zerani Prime, he visited Krixtal's granddaughter, who had been born free in the new galaxy. The young Zerani was studying human history, trying to understand how her people's liberation had begun. Admiral Morrison, she asked, why did humans fight for us? You could have made your own deal with the Council. You could have been safe. Jake smiled, remembering a similar question from long ago. Because being safe isn't enough. Not if it means others suffer for your safety. Freedom isn't something you can hoard. You either share it with everyone or you don't really have it at all. His final official act was overseeing the completion of the Memorial Worlds, star systems dedicated to remembering all the civilizations the Council had destroyed. Every species that had been lost was remembered, their cultures preserved, their stories told to new generations. Standing in the central memorial on what had once been the Council's capital world, Jake read the inscription he had written years before. To those who died in darkness, we promise your deaths brought light. To those who live in freedom, we promise never to forget the price that was paid. Jake Morrison died peacefully in his sleep at the age of 89, surrounded by friends from dozens of species. His funeral was attended by representatives from every world in the Republic. The honor guard included soldiers from civilizations that had once been enemies. In his final log entry, discovered after his death, Jake had written, "They called us monsters because we were willing to fight. They never understood that we were willing to fight so that others wouldn't have to. The greatest victory is not defeating your enemy. It's creating a world where such enemies cannot rise again." 50 years after Jake's death, the galaxy continued to thrive under the protection of the Galactic Republic. New civilizations were welcomed as equals, not exploited as resources. Wars still happened, but they were conflicts between equals, not the systematic oppression of the strong over the weak. Children across the galaxy learned about the dark time when the Council ruled through fear and deception, and how humanity's refusal to accept betrayal had saved them all. They learned that freedom was not a gift, but a responsibility that each generation had to earn and protect. The stars that had once been stained by the Council's crimes now shone clean, their light falling on worlds where every being could dream of a future they were free to choose. The fire that began with humanity's rebellion had burned away an empire of evil and lit the way to a better galaxy. And somewhere among those stars, on ships carrying the banner of the Galactic Republic, human guardians continued their eternal watch, ensuring that the flames of freedom would never be extinguished again.